Hi, welcome to the 14-day weather forecast. We're now heading into August and the nights are starting to shorten noticeably. But will the quiet conditions that we've had recently continue through the next couple of weeks? Well, let's see how things may develop. This is the picture at 18 GMT on Tuesday the 29th. The reason for the relatively quiet conditions is that high pressure from the Azores has been trying to build northeastwards towards the UK, but it hasn't become dominant. So we've had disturbances bring showery rain at times in from the Atlantic. Now, as I run the sequence, what we see is not a great deal changes in the short term. There's showery rain in places. At times, there could be some heavy bursts actually in the north and the east. Then high pressure becomes a little bit more dominant for a time. But as we go through the weekend and into the early part of next week, it could be turning a lot more unsettled. I'm going to highlight the fact straight away that different computer models are handling this period quite differently, and I'll look at some of the forecasts a little bit later. But according to the GFS, which this sequence is based on, Monday is a washout for heavy outbreaks of rain associated with an area of low pressure, and there could be some gusty winds around too. As I run this through to conclusion, that wet and windy weather moves away, then high pressure builds, but it doesn't look especially strong actually on this run. Further disturbances not far away to the west. So lots taking place through the first week. This is the jet stream and upper air temperature sequence for UK just here. The oranges indicating warm air aloft, the greens and blues average to cold. The mottled shaded area, of course, is the jet stream, and to begin with, it's fragmented and to the north of the UK. As I run it, what we'll see is the jet actually strengthens significantly to the west and heads towards the UK, and it's bringing those more unsettled conditions with it, at least for a time. Let's have a look at the day-to-day details just to show how things may develop. This is the picture on Wednesday. Forecast temperatures, maximums on the left, low to mid-20s perhaps, so fairly close to the average, and that's often going to be the case through the first week. There are some patch outbreaks of rain in places, a few showers as well, but lots of dry weather to be found in between. Moving forwards to Thursday, temperatures have nudged up a little bit in England and Wales, perhaps edged down a little in Northern Ireland and Scotland, but not a great deal of change. Some heavy showers though moving eastwards across parts of England, maybe thundery too. Then on to Friday, what we see is very similar really. Once more, there's the chance of some heavy and maybe thundery showers in central and eastern England, but I wouldn't pay too much attention at this point to the details, because there is lots of dry and bright weather to be found as well. Then into the weekend, so Saturday, temperatures maybe a little bit higher now in the north, so Scotland and Northern Ireland into the low 20s, low to mid 20s there in England and Wales too, and lots of dry and bright periods to be found. Maybe later on there could be some outbreaks of rain there pushing into Northern Ireland and Western Scotland. Sunday and Monday. Sunday, according to this, mostly dry, pleasantly warm, I think, in southern and central counties. But then on Monday, it's all changed. That area of low pressure moves eastwards and it's bringing showers and heavy outbreaks of rain and lower temperatures. But these charts are based on the GFS model as well, which the initial animation was, and I've already said it isn't necessarily supported by all of the other computer models. So let's take a quick look at this possibly wet and windy period on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I think Monday and Tuesday are the most likely days, but there's always a little bit of uncertainty when we've got this type of development. Now, this is the view from the GFS, so it's a static snapshot which was used in the initial animation. You can see the heavy outbreaks of rain there on Monday afternoon, affecting much of the UK, but even southern and central regions could get a soaking if it's right. Now, this is the UK Met Office global model. at midday on Monday, and you see it's quite different. It's dry across England and Wales. The heavy outbreaks of rain there are in the northwest, so Northern Ireland and Western Scotland, and it doesn't look such a well-developed feature as a GFS has. Now, the Canadian model has a band of rain moving eastwards through Sunday, so a little bit earlier, and it's fairly mixed in the days which follow. But the key thing is that southern and central regions miss most of the wet weather, staying mostly dry therefore. So it's a case of looking at the ensemble data to see what the chances are of this wet and windy period developing. This is the output from the GEFS on Monday the 4th of August. It's basically showing pressure patterns across the UK. Each one of the stamps, as they are called, is an individual forecast from an individual run or perturbation within the ensemble. I think quite a lot of them are actually showing a significant area of low pressure tracking across the UK. On balance, the likelihood is if it does develop, it's going to be affecting northern and western areas more so than southern and eastern ones. Here's the MOGREPS-G ensemble, so this one's run by the UK Met Office. It's also valid on the 4th of August, 18 GMT. There are fewer individual runs in it which develop this area of low pressure, and those which have it are basically, I think, keeping it to the northwest. So Northern Ireland and Scotland seeing the rain. The strongest winds would be on its southern flank, so maybe quite windy further south, but the wetter weather likely in the northwest. So quite a lot of uncertainty about how that will develop. The MOGREPS-G ensemble plot here shows wind gusts for Manchester, and it's through that period there, the 4th to the 6th of August, where we could see strong winds at the top end around 45 miles an hour. The GEFS wind gust charts, which I'm not going to show, have a few runs going higher up to about 60, and the area of strongest winds, well, likely to be in the north and the west, but some of the ensemble runs have windy conditions developing even in the London area in the southeastern corner. So all in all, it's a very uncertain picture through the Sunday, Monday, Tuesday part of the first week. The chance of heavy outbreaks of rain, I think mostly in the north and the west, strongest winds there too, but the unsettled conditions could push southward, so keep up to date with the short range forecasts. This shows the rain forecast from the MOGREPS-G for London. Spikes continue to appear through the first week. That period there, the 4th to the 6th, has some rain spikes too, so indicating that the low pressure system which I've been discussing may have an impact on the south, but it's far from certain. But the key thing here is that it doesn't look completely dry as we go through the first week. Although, with that said, certainly in my locality in Berkhamsted and the Chilterns, rainfall amounts have remained very small recently, and computer models have often overestimated the extent of the rain around here. So not completely dry, but perhaps not huge amounts of rain in the southeast. So in more general terms, the rain aggregate charts here for days 0 to 5 show the picture across the United Kingdom. ECM on the left, GFS on the right, and the ECM has more significant amounts of rain in central and eastern counties, and there is some support for that with the high pressure over the Azores having more influence in the southwest, so totals there are lower, but the GFS on the right generally has a lower amounts in across all areas. Moving forwards to the 0 to 10 day charts, the ECM has continued increasing the amount, so we've got quite a lot of rain actually over a big area. The green shading indicating between basically 50 to 80 millimeters. The driest conditions mostly near the south coast and in the southwest. The GFS on the right also has increased totals, perhaps not to the same extent, but this now has 30 to 40 millimeters of rain in East Anglia, for example, and a measurable amount, at least a significant amount in the southeastern corner. So I think the picture here is a little bit different to what we often see. It's not suggesting necessarily that the wettest conditions are going to be reserved entirely for the west and the northwest. The chance of greater amounts of rain in central and eastern counties than we've seen recently is certainly there. So something to keep an eye on. Now, in more general terms, how the deterministic models compare as we head towards the end of the first week. This is the GFS on Tuesday, the 5th of August. The area of low pressure, the nasty feature, is pulling away eastwards and it's turning more settled, at least for a time, but whether that would last is a different question. The Canadian model has high pressure having a good deal of influence at this point. There is an area of low pressure just to the north. The German icon, this also has quite a nasty feature pulling away eastwards, but then high pressure building in from the west, so supporting the idea of this unsettled period in the certainly on Monday. The European ECM also has an area of low pressure just near to Scotland, centred close to the Scotland at this point, so wet and windy conditions associated with it, high pressure in the south. The artificial intelligence version of the model, the high pressure extending further northwards, the areas of low pressure less developed. And finally, the UK Met Office Global, a bit different again, with high pressure there having a lot of say across basically all areas at this point. And that feature, which wasn't as well developed as the GFS and one or two of the other models, has moved away eastward. So it's quite a mixed picture as we head towards the end of the first week. There is a signal for high pressure to be building back from the southwest, from the west, bringing drier conditions, particularly to the southern half of the UK. The chance of wet and windy conditions, or at least showery and blustery conditions, rises the further northwards you head. How do things develop as we head through the second week? Does that mixed theme continue? Of course, at this range, it's just about the general trends and the probabilities using the ensemble data. So as usual, I'll start with a 16-day GEFS plot for London. Upper air temperatures across the top, and to begin with, at least the thick purple line, the ensemble mean, is a little bit below the long-term average, the thick black line. The trend, though, is clearly upwards, and it looks like it's going to become warm through the second half of the week, at least at this level, which is about 1,500 metres above our heads. Now, with that said, though, there are some very warm runs in the mix, some going up to about 20 degrees, and I think they're having the effect of pulling up the ensemble mean. So were you to strip out that smallish cluster of very warm runs, you would see the ensemble mean significantly closer to the long-term average. Dry periods continue through the week, but once more there are a few spikes showing up, so even in the southeast there could be showery rain at times. So what does the ECM ensemble look like? Does it back the GEFS? I've been using this more and more in recent weeks because I have noticed some differences between the GEFS and the ECM. It's perhaps the time of the year when forecast confidence isn't particularly high. But in general terms, this is similar to the GEFS on this occasion. We see temperatures a little bit below the average for the first few days before they trend upwards. Although there are perhaps fewer very, very warm runs in the mix. You can see there are less fewer lines going up towards the 20-degree mark, and it's worth pointing out that this actually shows a lot more runs than the GEFS. There are, I think, about 50 on here as opposed to 32 on the GEFS plot. So if it was consistent completely, you would expect to see more runs heading up towards this level. So the general trend is similar to the GEFS, but the extremely warm runs have been thinned out. In terms of rainfall, well, a lot of dry weather is likely. The grey numbers show the percentage chance of it being completely dry at each time step, and it's difficult to read them, but most are around 70 to 80 or even 90%. Here are the 2 metre temperatures for the London area from the GEFS, and daytime maximums here are trending upwards. The amount of red increases, the 26 to 30s, a little bit of the over 30s starts showing up once more as well. and the 21 to 25 there takes up a lot of column space. The nighttime lows, mostly yellows through the early part, those are the 11 to 15s, but here as well it looks like there's a signal for overnight minimums to be rising as we head through the second week. The picture from Manchester, quite similar, certainly in terms of per air temperatures. The trend there is upwards as well, like it was on the London chart. Maybe a few more rain spikes towards the very end of the second week there, but the general theme is consistent. The 2 metre temperatures from the GEFS for Manchester, the trend here is also upwards. It's fairly clear to see. The amount of 21s to 25s is increasing, as is the 26 to 30s through the days, although it's staying a relatively small percentage of the total ensemble. The overnight lows strongly dominated by the 11 to 15 category throughout the second week actually. So it's the daytime values which are seeing an upwards shift. Glasgow, quite similar, although the warming trend is less marked here. The ensemble mean staying below the 30-year norm until around the 9th or the 10th of August. And there's quite a big spread there by the end with some warmer runs and some cooler ones showing up. And also a notably higher chance of rain throughout the second week, from more spikes continuing to appear as we head towards the middle of August. The 2 metre temperatures for Glasgow, something of an upwards trend later with the 21s to 25s returning, but it's not especially well defined, and it's the orange shade in the 16s to 20s which make up most of the column space. The overnight lows 6 to 10 for much of the week, so cooler as you head northwestwards, as is usually the case. Rainfall for the second week. The ECM charts here, generated from the ensemble, show the percentage chance of 5 or more millimetres of rainfall on the first 3 days. On the first day, it looks like the chance is high in the west and the northwest. You can see the orange and red shading, which indicates between 60 to 80%, but it quickly falls away, but the distribution remains similar with the greatest chance in the northwest. The next 3 days, probably lots of dry weather to be had if this is correct. The chance of significant amounts of rain only really in the northwest, where it's staying around 40%. But as I pointed out with these before, they are showing 5 or more millimetres of rain, so were I to bring up charts which were showing the percentage chance of 1 or 2 millimetres, there would be a lot more shading on them. The risk would be significantly higher. So some showery rain is still possible despite what these are showing. The mean surface level pressure data table for York. There isn't a strong trend on this update. The yellows there continue to dominate, runs which are mostly a little bit above the average, but some of them will be a tad below it. And there is a fair amount of orange appearing. Those are strongly dominated by high pressure, and just a little green, a low pressure dominated run. So pressure probably close to or above the average through the second week, and with it building up from the south, you would expect the anomaly to be greater in places like London, Birmingham and the southwest. So basically as you head further south across the UK, the signal is for high pressure to be more influential. Here's the GEFS snapshot pressure chart and upper air temperature chart actually for Friday the 8th of August. You can see there's always high pressure building northeastwards towards the UK. The 10 Celsius isotherm is just here, just moving up into the south, and it's worth remembering that because this is generated by averaging out all of the individual runs, you've got the cooler ones and the warmer ones, and to a large extent they're cancelling each other out. So that 10-degree marker there isn't necessarily representative because of the way it's calculated. But the general theme here is for high pressure to be having quite a lot of influence. The European ensemble has warmer air further north, so the 10-degree line here is basically going across central parts of the UK, high pressure building up from the south. And when I'm talking about 10 degrees, of course, don't forget that's the air temperature at about 1,500 metres above sea level. This isn't showing temperatures down at the surface. So a signal there for high pressure to be quite influential, at least through the second half of the second week. So to summarise, week 1, rather changeable with showery rain. Temperatures fluctuate around the average. And then there is that possibility of a wet and windy period, Monday and Tuesday being the most likely days. The strongest winds and the heaviest outbreaks of rain probably in the northwest if they turn up, but there is still a lot of uncertainty, and the chance of wet and windy conditions could extend even into southern counties for a time. Week 2, the risk of rain reduces, especially in the south. Temperatures climb above the average, and there is a possibility of it becoming very warm. Once more, that's most likely to happen in the south. So, there we have it. I think quite a mixed period of weather in many ways. There is that chance, at least, of a wet and windy spell. Lots of uncertainty, as I hope that I've highlighted. And as I've emphasised at this stage, it would seem the north and the northwest are the places most likely to be impacted by it. And then, as we go through the second week, a chance of it turning dry and warm or very warm. The final caveat I'll throw into the mix here is that there has been a tendency for those dry and very warm conditions to be gradually pushed back and back by the computer models in successive updates. So they could be on the way, but it's not a given. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this forecast and found it useful. As ever, then if you did, please consider hitting the like button below and subscribing to the channel if you've not done so already, because by doing that, you'll never miss any of my future updates. Also, stay up to date with the day-to-day weather developments, and it looks like there could be quite a lot taking place, by checking out the TheWeatherOutlook.com website. Thanks very much now. Bye.